Fantastic. Thanks, all. So you've given us a bit of an overview of what BOC broadly does in the market. I think what would be good for the audience here is to understand what drove your decision to evaluate Salesforce Field Service, what was happening at the point in time where you entered into that decision, and then, of course, what's happened subsequently.
I might start with the big picture, and then Damian can take us into the specifics. So we implemented sales and service for our call center and account management processes we're probably in our 5th year now. And so that's where we started our journey with Salesforce. One of the keys over the last couple of years that we've been looking to do is a significant focus on the 360-degree view of the customer. And as I sort of alluded to, a key component of that, particularly for what we consider our bulk customers, is the whole interaction between our account teams and the team that actually deliver the products, but install and maintain the products. And our starting point was, although we had some great systems, I can say that because Damian had actually built them, they were completely disconnected, completely invisible to the two parts of the organisation. So for us, the key drive was how can we improve that connectivity between our account management and our field service team to be able to improve the service that we ultimately provided to the customer.
Yeah, so I guess to talk to some specifics more on that field service journey, if we go back a number of years, I forget exactly the date, but all of our field service technicians were entirely paper-based. So we were printing out a month's worth of work, you'd hand it to one of the techs and you'd cross your fingers that it would come back at some stage. And there was all sorts of trading and bargaining going on between the technicians as to who was doing what. But also, you'd get your carbon copy checklists back with varying degrees of quality in terms of what was going on them, or coffee stains, as it were, for some of the technicians. So we took a leap back then to essentially turn that process digital, using a different product at the time. But as good as that was to get everything in a digital platform where we could see it all, it was still very much a paper-based process, I guess. So it was still download all that data, hand it off to the technicians, and they, by and large, scheduled their own work and their own days. Obviously, there's a bit of control there around specifics that needed to happen at specific times, but it was a free-for-all, probably it's the best way to describe it most of the time. So, yeah, really what we were looking to do was to take not necessarily control of that, but take the next step along that journey. Obviously answer some questions around how effective your technicians are you making the best use of their time, and those sorts of things as well. And that's really what drove us down that field service path once we sort of evaluated a few different options, and could we integrate with what we had and some other outside stuff. And obviously, as Jason touched on, we had some existing stuff in the Salesforce platform, and it made a lot of sense to bring it all into the one platform where everyone could see it.
I think that one other thing too is we do installs, and we do reactive maintenance and proactive maintenance, and part of our challenge is how that got prioritised, and what often was happening behind the scenes is, well, if you're my installer and I think this install is important, I'll ring up the account manager could ring you up and then get that prioritised over what we may have considered a more critical piece of proactive or reactive maintenance work. And so there was a lot of flexibility for our technicians with regards to, and our account teams as well, to be able to bypass what we would have thought may have been the prioritised work.
Yeah, and in that, I mean, we've had schedulers in scheduling roles the whole time. But I think we did a time in motion study a number of years ago, and they may be spending 5% of their time actually scheduling. And there was a lot of other noise around exactly that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's been very nice to actually have them empowered and scheduling. And some of them have taken it to it like ducks into water. They absolutely love it. So it's good.
Jason, I guess there's always competition for investment funds in your business. So you kind of got this feeling and seen some demonstrations, talked to us, felt like it was a good idea, but how did you progress the business case? What was the business case predicated on? So what did you do to get the project going?
Yeah, I assume, well, I don't know whether our investment process will be better than worse than anyone that's sitting around the table, but I'm sure you will often look with envy at somebody else's and go, I wish I had that investment process. You know, we are, particularly with regards to IT, we're quite ROI driven. I think the fact that we were already in the Salesforce journey helped us a little bit because we were able to demonstrate and go back and look and say, well, this is what the introduction of the first modules have been able to give us and what we've been able to drive. But just the replacement of our current system wasn't enough. And we did actually need to, we were tasked with, can we make it an ROI driven project? And that's where work Damian started to do came into it. So you might go through that, some of that detail.
Yeah. And I should preface this by saying a lot of this happened over a number of years as we had a few restructures throughout the business and various priorities and stuff got lost. So we did string Clive along a little bit, but we got there in the end, which was good. Yeah, so I guess we started off with some retrospective data around what our technicians had been doing, and I'll tell you right now, that was a nightmare to try and reconstruct their day back with what we used to have, just to try and work out where people had been and what they'd done. But we got a sample of that. I think at the time we actually provided that to the Salesforce team, just to sort of, you know, run this through your optimization at a very high level and tell us maybe what could come back. And I think, I don't remember the exact numbers, but we said, look, we can do this percentage travel improvement and that sort of stuff. We wanted a degree more of certainty, I guess, amongst the board before we committed. So we then commissioned a proof of concept where we essentially did the same exercise, but in-house. So we built out a skeleton of the functionality that we might need, put some of our real job data in there, and then ran that through the optimization tools to work out what our travel and those sorts of things would look like. That was actually good on a couple of fronts because not only did it do some of the work that we would have done in the project anyway, so we were sort of getting a head start on that, it gave us a really good idea of what other work we needed to do. So it actually gave us that hands-on time with the tool, which was, personally, I got heaps out of that. And so we could then firm down that RFQ for the full project. So once we had that, we kind of had a couple of different sources of data that agreed with, you know, sort of a high and low range of, or what did we call it? Conservative and optimistic travel improvement. Obviously, all of the soft benefits around time savings for processing, that sort of stuff, built out a business case from there. And yeah, the timing was right. I think when we were speaking about this recently, there was a point around the maturity of the business as well. And we were at that point where, you know, these other parts of Salesforce were reasonably well embedded too. So all of that other stuff around bringing in all of these customer interactions into the same platform that the sales team can see, customer service can see, it all just stars kind of aligned on that front, I suppose.
So just to be, although there were probably a number of metrics that we could have used, we justified the investment effectively on the efficiency from travel was the one. We can talk about a whole lot of the other things, but ours was justified on travel saving. And because we have a mix of employee and contractor is in this piece, and so yeah, it was efficiency around travel. Effectively drove the whole ROI for us.
Yeah, and I think we'll touch on the actual benefits a bit later on, but we've definitely seen a lot more than that now that it's implemented too.
So just to be clear, what you did is we did a paid engagement, like a proof of concept, in order to help them validate what they thought they could get out of the system. And then Damian was able to really sort of get his hands on that prototype that we built and retrospectively look at how the performance would be improved, which was pretty sort of impressive on Damian's account, but really helped them sort of get the case across. So once we'd had our proposal accepted to do the work, how did the implementation go? And I'm starting to ask some Dorothy Dixes here to get some nice things about ProQuest. And I might say to the audience, you know, we've got a couple more questions here, but feel free if something comes up to start asking your own questions. But yeah, the implementation, what were the key sort of takeaways from from that whole process?
Yes, I think right from the get-go, and I think this comes back to doing the proof of concept as well, we're able to establish some pretty clear sort of goals, map out the pain points for the different personas throughout our organization too, which then kind of steered which pieces we would focus on throughout the development. And it was evident very early on that that the expertise from the ProQuest side was going to help us. So I remember a couple of particular instances where we thought we were going to go about a certain piece of functionality one way, but we had a sort of comfortable enough relationship that the ProQuest team could actually challenge us on that and suggest something different. And that's actually helped shape our implementation in a very positive direction. Because, I mean, from our side, it was the first time we were using this tool, right? So whilst we'd had some exposure from the POC, we're certainly not experts. I don't claim to be an expert now by any means. So yeah, having that experience and that fairly open, comfortable relationship was from my side personally really great as well. And yeah, look, the time flew by. I'm a little sad we don't have those daily calls anymore. That was like the best part of my day. But
You can call me anytime.
yeah. But like, yeah, we had really, really good working relationship, I think. And yeah, it just progressed and progressed. Obviously, we had to provide input where we needed to provide input. There were probably times that actually on our side we struggled to keep up with the pace that things were being delivered, which I suppose is a good thing. It's a fairly aggressive timeline, I guess, but we came in pretty much on time and on budget from memory, which is always a good thing for one of these projects. Last thing you want to do is go and ask for more money. So we managed to avoid that one, thankfully. But yeah, overall experience is incredibly positive, which was great.
Yeah, maybe have Jason say a little more, but one of the key things I think about this particular contract was it's a collaboration and try to be on the same side of the table with the contract, where we didn't want to get into any kind of conflict where there's some fixed price for absolutely fixed scope that's being strenuously applied. We know what we're doing. We work at velocity and we work out together. Sure, we know what the project price is. We know pretty much what we're going to deliver, but there'll be some leeway along the way because you might want to move things in and out of scope, make some pragmatic decisions. But what we want to do is converge to that price because it's hard for you to go back to your board and say, oh, we need another $100,000. And I think that's what we achieved here. But Jason, you might have more to say.
Yeah, the way we're structured is before we get engaged, we have a very enthusiastic procurement team who love to get their teeth because they're experts at everything. They're not here, so they were very helpful in setting up, laying the foundation of the relationship, and then we spent the first sort of couple of months then trying to get it to where we actually needed it to be. I think as Clive mentioned, we've done a few of these things before, and I think one of my learnings coming into when we're engaging with a partner to work with us is you need to have the common goal. I mean, it's a bit of a easy thing to say, but we've done it in the past where we go, well, we're just handing responsibility to you, and it's just very adversarial because you don't achieve the outcomes that you're wanting to. And I think because we've done the proof of concept and stuff along the way, we recognize the value that we know what we want to achieve out of our scheduling and what we want our people to do, but we didn't know everything about what Salesforce could offer to fix that. And I think, we also had a very good product, although he's sitting here, because you'd built the prior system. You weren't hung up about things and we knew the pain points. And I think that was an important piece for us, the collaboration and working together clearly, but not being fixed on it must be this module or it must be this way, because we knew what we wanted to achieve from a functionality perspective, but we were less hung up about, and it must be done this way within the system. Because if we could achieve the outcome, because we're very much focused on how do we continue to get the right engagement with our field technicians and generate the return on investment that we were looking for.
Yeah, and I think it's probably also worth mentioning that for those other parts of Salesforce that were using, that implementation was done by a different
For a part, yeah.
partner that we have a global agreement with, I think.
Mhm.
So it was a bit of a leap of faith to go outside of that, but at the same time, they were not experts in field service. So that probably would have opened up a lot of other pitfalls. And yeah, that expertise, knowing the tool, knowing what it can do, I think has delivered a lot for us throughout the journey.
Sure. I was talking to somebody in the audience earlier about the fact they've got Salesforce in as CRM. They've got other systems that are driving the whole field service thing. So they lack that common platform, and it's a big problem when you've got data everywhere and it's not necessarily integrated easily. So that was, you mentioned that common platform with the sales team was a big driver. And also, yeah, the decommissioning of other apps. So maybe what has been the outcome and what kind of metrics have you seen improvement in since going live?
Yeah, so lots of different things. Not everything that we were sort of expecting from day one. I think we're, based on the business case, very hung up on the travel piece, and that's certainly been there. Probably the unexpected piece was actually and again, look, this varies state by state, and I think the term we used describing it the other day was non-homogenous amongst our organisation in terms of how our technicians behave and perform and what expectations they're trying to meet. But through setting the expectation of a schedule and how many jobs should fit in that day, we've actually seen across the board on average an increase in how many jobs the techs are getting through. So part of that's the travel time, the travel reduction. And then the other part of that is they're spending less time on the job. Now, whether that's because they're spending less time punching around on the iPad or whether they're just getting through it because they can see the schedule for the rest of the day. Little bit hard to tell, but my gut feel is that there's just that level of expectation. So yeah, I think when we looked at some samples, we were talking around 10 or 15% improvement in that space, which is great. It's helping us actually get through a backlog of jobs and handle some fairly major projects as well, which weren't there before. So yeah, on that side, it's been really handy. And then obviously there's all of that soft stuff that we're talking about in terms of getting this information on the same platform. So our sales team have gone from having absolutely no view of all of these customer interactions to being able to see the last time a technician was on site, see their paperwork. And, you know, the example we go back to is we had a call out let's say we had a call out at 3 a.m. to keep the customer running, and that's happening at the same time you're negotiating a contract. Like, that's invaluable.
Yeah.
Trying to put a dollar figure to that.
Yeah. Again, another thing we had during the implementation was fun. I think we all agreed it was a great project. We enjoyed working with you. So it was fun doing it. But hopefully, would you say your organization is having a bit more fun operating the system? Because when you've got broken systems, it's not a lot of fun and a lot of pain sorting the shit out, basically.
Yeah, and that's hit differently for different people throughout the organization as well. And I think it's probably important to touch on the fact that this is a massive cultural change for our technicians. So they've gone from a position of essentially deciding their own day for the most part to having a prescribed schedule and limiting the amount of how far forward they see that. So, you know, some of them are okay with it. Some of the really independent, really qualified guys are, you know, maybe not the happiest, but like I say, we're seeing that return coming back on their output as well. And then certainly for some of the other roles throughout the business, yeah, there's a lot more enjoyment there. Like I said before, our schedulers actually have the opportunity and the empowerment to schedule. And as we rolled out in each state, obviously their personalities are all a little bit different, but for some of them, you could see the fire reignite. It was just that influence on the business was the piece that they were missing, because they were kind of in a really sort of squishy position before, where they were getting asked a lot of things but didn't have a lot of influence to make it happen. So
Right.
yeah, there's definitely an element of that, absolutely.
Awesome, thanks guys. So